The mirror was shattered, and a sufficiently mean-looking shard had triangled itself into the corner, hooked and slim as the vein it would open. Be done with it. Get it right this time, Father. When it passed, he thought of Marianne, and for the third time that morning considered calling her. Then, for the third time, remembered his refusal to see her when she had last visited. That had been the end of things. Even within the fog of the hydrocodone, he had known as much. Not that it mattered. Whatever small thing they had shared had withered the moment she entered the church. Their slow ruin made sudden in the shadow of his self-annihilation. That was, after all, his intent. He left the men's room for the ticket office. He wanted a drink, but there was nothing in the station. Somewhere down the road, then. Roanoke, maybe, if he could last that long. He had started last spring with wine, a fruity Merlot or a good claret one of the women would bring by the parsonage. By the fall, he was drinking a gallon a day. But that was finished, too. All that was left was home. He stared at a map marked with fares and disclaimers, routes of blue lines that wiggled and stretched with vascular density, then took his ticket and bag and walked into a waiting room that smelled like carpet cleaning fluid, some vaguely carcinogenic detergent. He thought the child might be waiting for him, but had found instead a woman and her 2 daughters. She was a girl, really, 19, maybe 20, with bitten nails and plastic shoes, her mouth loaded with golden bridge work, dull and intricate. A baby slept in a carrier beneath a blanket, and a 3-year-old pulled around the girl's feet like the train of a dress. When the PA came on, the girl gathered her children. "Did they say Richmond?" she asked. Malcolm nodded, and she bit her lip and began to cry. When she stood, she appeared stunted, somehow diminished in the harsh fluorescent light. She looked at her children with more exhaustion than judgment. "All right." She pulled the girl up by her narrow wrist and lifted the baby carrier. The child's earrings sparkled. "This is us. Come on, precious," the girl said. "This is not a drill. This is not a goddamn test." The bus crossed the Beltway and took I-66 past concrete cloverleaves and rings of track housing gone shabby with neglect. 30 miles southeast of Washington, there were new developments. Prefab mansions crowded in fields of turned earth. I-81, an endless string of billboards, all-nude Café Risqué, battlefield relics, country skillets with 18-ounce ribeyes. His forehead tipped against the cool glass. Past him the Shenandoah and ache of rolling pasture and Civil War battlefields. It was raining, and he realized there had been something in the sky every mile of his trip south. Snow in Amherst and Hartford, sleet turning to rain as he left Grand Central and slipped down the eastern seaboard. Now it was snowing again, 40 miles north of Blacksburg, and the highway lined with decomposing memorials gone gray in the sleet. "We love Vautech. Pray for the Hokies." He took the print of Grunewald's crucifixion from his bag and studied the tortured shape. The doctors had taken his New Testament and his copy of Leon Bloy's Pilgrim of the Absolute, but they had not found the print. In Roanoke, he bought a carton of Camels and took a taxi from the station to an unpaved lane that wound up the ridge through a stand of tulip poplars. Jefferson Roddick's place sat on the crown of the hill past the tubes of a cattle guard, the house neglected and small, with a wide front porch and a collapsing block stoop. Goats moved through a yard cluttered with junk, farm implements, and an antique RC Cola drink box, bee boxes and trash, fishing line tangled in the low branches of a pine. There was no sunlight in the trees, and snow browned in patches. Malcolm found Jefferson at the shed out back, a slain doe tied to the rack of a Yamaha Kodiak, a larger buck limp on the concrete beside the four-wheeler. Malcolm stood at a distance and watched him cut behind the Achilles tendon, slide a spreader through the incisions, and pulley the deer so that it dangled from the rafters. A gout of blood fell from its mouth, thick and gelatinous, and splattered across the floor. "Lung blood," Jefferson said, looking up. "See how dark? You blew out the backstrap. Couldn't get a better shot." Malcolm walked over. "Can I help?" "Maybe get that bucket." The bullet entered just above the liver, passed through the lower cavity and entered the lungs. The entry wound a neat hole, the exit an explosion of fur and purple tissue. Jefferson glided the blade of his old-timer around the penis and up the chest, while Malcolm peeled the still-warm flesh. Jefferson rolled his sleeves and tore out the rooted entrails. When the deer were dressed, they sat on the porch. Jefferson's rough hands pink and folded in his lap, his beard as short and uneven as his hair. Malcolm had known him years ago in seminary as the smartest person in a class of very smart people, every semester taking a full load while sitting in on 4 or 5 classes in philosophy and Russian studies. Jefferson had been ordained in the Southern Baptist Church and joined the Navy as a chaplain, where he deployed with a Marine battalion before being chaptered out on a psych discharge. Malcolm blew into his hands. It's freezing out here. You get numb after a while. You get used to it. Look here. Jefferson took a fifth of Evan Williams from between his thighs, swallowed and passed it to Malcolm. Tattooed on his left forearm, bright as a jewel, beat the Sacred Heart of Jesus. You know, you look fucked up enough for both of us. He took the bottle back and drank. Don't take that the wrong way. I had a bad run, Malcolm said. I heard you tried to kill yourself. That's what they tell me. That means it's probably true, Jefferson said. You bring me anything? Malcolm took the camels from his bag and Jefferson removed a pack. There's such evil shit in the air. I'm glad to see you, but you need to leave in the morning. He put the cigarette between his lips. You headed home? For the summer, Malcolm said. Dennis Turner got me a job at a school in Haiti starting in the fall. Dennis fucking Turner. Jefferson shook his head. A goat settled into a scratch of grass. Legs curled beneath it like a dog. You know it wasn't your fault, he said. It wasn't mine either. All that shit they fed us about truth and beauty. He held out one hand and rubbed his thumb against his fingertips. Pass that back.